Giselle Arcanzo,
Vanessa Sofia Abranica. We are the third-year students from Hingoog City Colleges, taking Bachelor of Physical Education. Today, we will discuss the violence of sports, the quasi-criminal violence, the causes of quasi-criminal violence, and the solutions of quasi-criminal violence.
what is violence in sports? Violence in sport usually refers to the violent and often unnecessary, harmful, intentional physical act committed during or motivated by a sports game. Often in relation to the contact in sport such as football, ice hockey, rugby football, lacrosse, association football, boxing, mixed martial arts, wrestling, and water polo. This act of violence can include intentional attempts to injure a player or coach by another player or coach, but can also include threats of physical harm or actual physical harm sustained by players or coaches by fans or engaging in a suspecting of sports, or threats that can act of violence performed by fans or spectators upon opposing fans or other spectators.
What is quasi-criminal violence? Quasi-criminal violence is an act that violates the sports rules and possibly criminal laws. An example would be punching someone in the head during a soccer game. Criminal violence is an extreme act that causes severe physical harm or even death and almost always results in criminal charges. Quasi-criminal violence violations that are clearly outside of the game and maybe result in sanctions by a governing body. Examples of quasi-criminal violence are cheap shots, blindside hit, and flagrant fouls that endanger player's body and reject the norm, calling for dedication to the game above all else.
Reasons for player violence include the nature of the game. Contact sports are more likely to lead to violence, for example, ice hockey versus balls. Provocation, crowd chanting abuse, slandering by other players. Disappointment or frustration at all performance, the result of the official decision. Dehumanized, the view of the opposition caused by protective helmet and clothing which turn opponents into objects rather than people to be respected. Equipments. Sports such as hockey and baseball use equipment that may be subconsciously viewed as weapons. Crowd behavior. Abuse and emotional intensity can affect the venue, media hype, or players. Other causes of violence in quasi-criminal violence. High level of competition, emotional responses. Alcohol or drugs, social and sports enhancing. Rivalry between different groups. Copying violence of role models, performers. Social media. Perception of poor officiating. Access to weapons, overcrowding in the stadium.
The solutions to prevent quasi-criminal violence. Players, parents, and coaches sign a code of sportsmanship so everyone involved in the sports is responsible for preventing violence. Define what the consequences are and ensure that everyone's understand when the line from aggressive play to violence has been crossed. Parents and coaches need to be an example of good sportsmanship for young players. Enforce consequences to make it clear that you don't tolerate violence. When participants realize that their actions have consequences that may affect their future, sports violence can be prevented. You need to ensure that consequences are more than a slap on the wrist in order to deter the participants from engaging in violent behavior. Rules provide an agreement of understanding to competition. In in sports, rules define what is allowed or not allowed to occur during situations on and off the court. Rules govern anything from wearing proper uniforms to how to keep score during games of different levels of competition. The rules of a game apply to players, coaches, and officials and vary among different sports and age groups. Teach kids sportsmanship by emphasizing that a sport is fun to play and that the outcome of the game isn't the most important aspect. You can enroll your kids in non-competitive sports where there isn't a score. Encourage the players to recognize the talent of opposing players and avoid behavior like chatter or heckling. Use law officials. Police officers have the authority to stop violence and maintain control of sporting events. The presence of law officials prevents sports violence by reminding participants that there are consequences for violence.
Let's proceed the strategy to prevent violence. The Law Society is sent to control violence by treating a violent action in sport the same as violent act in a society. Stating the law should be equal for both instances. Performer should be educated to avoid violence and control their emotion. Tooling and stress management. Performer should be understand that they are role models that should be promote fair play, philosophy, and rules of the game. Violence leads to punishment such as bans and some criminal investigation. Often, most powerful motive, teams can be also punished by NGP, or example, points deducted or eliminating them from the competition. Effective officiating can avoid violence. Example, in rugby, preventing a situation before it happens. Some sports use footage from games to punish violent conduct after the competition. Also, coaches or manager promote assertion, not aggression. Cameras and microphones of referee cuts out violence toward officials. We hope that this information will give you understanding and awareness about the causes and solution of the quasi-criminal violence. This has been Giselle Franco and Vanessa Sofia Abrenica. Thank you for listening and have a great day.